How are you?
Yeah, the Grey Cup hangover loss. It feels like it's been a long week. It feels like.
Yeah. How will you look back at the year?
It was an interesting year coming out the way we did, where we were 0-4 and 2-6, and then went on that nice little hot streak and ended up winning the West. It was very different than the years past, and we played so well in the West final here. And just when you don't win the Grey Cup, it's just a disappointing year, especially when you get there. So frustrated, disappointed is the feeling.
I don't want to rehash a whole lot, but what's going through your mind as you see Zach warming up with a frozen finger and you see him go in and start throwing interceptions? What's happening in your head?
Yeah, it's just like everybody. It was frustrating. I mean, it was chaotic there on the sideline. There was so many people down there compared to a regular game, and I sort of just try to find a quiet spot by myself and watch the game. And Zach had gone in and come out, and it looked like the medical staff had cleared him, and was feeling positive at that time when he went back in the game. And obviously the game didn't. The last 10 minutes of the game kind of got away from us clearly.
Look at your roster and your free agent list, which
Yep.
is always lengthy.
Yeah.
You get position priorities, or do you get a list of priorities?
Yeah, it's an interesting one this year, Paul, with where we're at. I mean, we've got coaches interviewing for jobs. We've got Ted and Danny interviewing for jobs. So, Mike and I have had a couple preliminary conversations on this sort of stuff, but it's a interesting year that until we get our staff settled at some point, then you'll go in with a little bit more in-depth discussions. So that's been a little bit different this year from in-depth, detailed roster conversations and input from everybody until you're hesitant to have too much conversations with people that may not be in the organization next year. So it's kind of just been me and Mike at this moment, huddled together, talking next year.
Of course, Mike is the number one guy there for you to bounce things off of, obviously. What's your sense of, to get back into this level, same level, and to get into Grey Cup that you're hosting, do you have a feeling of how much surgery your roster might need?
No, you know what I had said, you had mentioned a lot of free agents, but everybody has so many. I actually thought this year we're slightly better off than years past with just the number of guys that are back and where we're at. So it's, the battle will start where we'll prioritize our own free agents and see how that goes. And it never goes quick or smooth once the agents get involved. And you may have an idea of a plan, and that plan may go awry, and there's so many different discussions, and you have to be able to pivot depending on how things go throughout the next couple of months. And then after that, we'll certainly identify where our money situation is, and can we dip into free agency this year and upgrade certain positions if need be. So that's kind of the next process over the next couple months.
Does it feel like your roster's at the point where you need to make it younger, or do you feel like you can ride kind of a core one more?
Well, I think one of the reasons we started a little bit slow this year was the transition to some younger guys. You look at our receiving core, you look at our D-line where we had, and defensive back, whether they were first-year players in the CFL, but certainly a lot of first-year contributors on both sides of the ball, more so this year than we ever have. So we kind of saw this coming last year, and we're going to transition a bit to some younger guys this year, which is now, at certain positions you're seeing it. While still keeping some of the core together for sure. But, that process started this year. And as I said, I think combined with some of the injuries we had early and the transition to some younger players, that certainly contributed to the struggle. But it also was different this year that you saw our team kind of improve as the year went on, as these younger players that were contributing got a little bit more comfortable with the league. And, so we'll continue that process next year. But with the young guys that we have under contract that contributed, I'm feeling probably better now than in years past in regards to the transition to youth heading into the next season.
You said that you have coaches, plural, interviewing for positions. We know that Buck was given position to speak to the Lions.
Yeah, Richie was given permission to speak with Ottawa about their defensive coordinator position. I don't know if that's public or not, or I don't know. They said, can we? And we said, yeah. So that's all. Once that happens, then I'm not sure where we are in the process, whether Richie has said yes or no, or not sure.
You had some key players on season-ending injuries, Big Hill, Strevler, Schoen, Parker. How does that affect your potential contracts and negotiations?
Yeah, I mean, the agents would say it doesn't. You know, that's the answer there. But yeah, we'll have to monitor the health of those guys, and yeah, it was a record-setting in a negative way, the number of season-ending injuries we had this year. It was a real challenge for the medical staff, but Al and his crew are rehabbing them, and you know, with those type of injuries nowadays, it seems with the advanced surgery and how good the rehab people are, that they'll all, you know, based on their timelines, they should all be back and healthy. But yeah, to your point of, do you get organizationally, can we approach them and say, well, your guy was hurt, he should come back for less money? Generally, they don't view it like that. They view that they'll be back 100%.
And do you base a lot of it on, you know, the past value they've brought to the team?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when you look at it, nobody's interested in taking pay cuts. That's the first one right there. So every single agent and every single player at the very least would expect to come back for what they've made. That's the bare minimum from their end starting point. Now, organizationally, we may have a different view of, at this point in your career, we no longer see you at this price point, but we see you at this price point, and that's when the fun starts, I guess.
How many offers do you have out there right now?
None, actually. As I said, Mike and I have talked, and you know, you all are smart enough to look at our roster and probably pinpoint a handful of, well, these free agents probably should be the ones they go after first. So we'll start getting the ball rolling on those, and then, you know, once you get your guys targeted that you want first and get those price points set and what's that going to cost, and then there's the domino effect of what did that cost and what do you have left to fill out the rest of things. So same as every year.
So do you have 28 or 27 free agents right now?
Oh, goodness gracious. Somewhere, and I don't really know. I mean, I've got the positional chart here. They're all broken down into option years and contract years and free agents, and then the guys that finish the year on the practice roster are free agents. So yeah, I mean, somewhere in that range.
And is Jake De La Gala, is he a free agent?
He is under contract next year.
For next year, okay.
Yes.
How's it going, Kyle?
Good, John. How are you?
Doing well. I wanted to ask about Buck. BC requested, correct?
Yeah, BC and Edmonton.
And Edmonton
Yeah.
asked as well. Okay, thanks. Ted and Danny, as you mentioned, requested in Hamilton.
Hamilton, yep.
You've obviously spent 10 years with those guys as your assistants. What would you see them potentially bringing to, I'm not saying the Ticats in specific, but if one of them were to get a GM opportunity in the future, what would you see them bringing to that role?
Well, I've said this for as many as these openings have come out. I don't understand why both of them don't have GM jobs by now. I think it's standard operating procedure in sports. When you have an organization that has sustained success like the Winnipeg Football Club, it seems commonsensical that the guys that were pivotal in getting that, to your point, we've been together building this 10 years from where we're not very good to going to Grey Cup 5 times in a row. It's nonsensical to me how they don't have GM jobs already, to be honest.
I asked Mike this during his avail last week, but he doesn't have a contract beyond 2025. You don't have a contract beyond 2025. Do you anticipate that either or both of you will get an extension before next year, or will you be working in the last year of that deal?
As of now, probably working on the last year. I would think nothing's been discussed, John, certainly from Wade down to me or Mike. So,
thanks. Last one from me. Chris Strevler said he wants to be back for next year. You mentioned you've got Jake. Obviously, you've got Terry.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that backup quarterback spot as a place where you want a 6-7 year veteran, or do you see that as a spot where maybe you have to get younger with, you know, Zach obviously going the last year of his deal and getting another year older?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's you know, we'll have to find out who our offensive coordinator is first, because again, there's the point of these type of very interesting discussions as far as what does our quarterback room look like next year? And it'll be interesting. We'll have to, we'll see how the Vernon Adams shakes down and the domino effect in Montreal. Like it'll be an interesting off season from a quarterback standpoint of Trey. Like where do McLeod, all these free agents, where do they end up, and who's kind of the odd man out in regards to starting position, and then can you add an experienced player maybe as a number 2 in your room that's won some games, that started some games. So these are all, that'll be a very interesting over the next couple months how that quarterback in our league, how it all shakes down and who ends up where.
Hey Kyle, Josh Weiss, I'm with the Free Press. I'm just thinking with the way last off season shook out for you, maybe at a couple key positions. I think a lot of fans maybe look at the returner spot as one and how the return game struggled this year. I'm just wondering, and you saw with the way Janarian Grant obviously was named another All-Star this year. Do you learn anything from last season, and are there learning opportunities there that you can kind of apply to this year, and where you maybe focus or decide?
Yeah, from a learning span, 100%, whether it's the draft, whether it's free agency, whether it's internal free agents, external free agents. Yeah, you look, and we tend to focus on, how can we improve in each of those areas? And yes, to your point of whether a draft pick worked out or didn't, why didn't it work out? What was our thought process? In free agency, why didn't it end up the way we wanted? How could you revisit that and have the same discussion? So most definitely you look back from year to year and say, what could we have done differently? And let's not make, if we want to change the decisions, let's change the decisions.
I don't want to ask the exact same question as John, but I am curious, just going back to Zach, because when we talked to him last week, he didn't directly say it to us, but you really did get the feeling like next year very well could be the last year for him. And I'm just wondering, do you see this off season as an opportunity to maybe set yourself up for that easy transition? You talked about how chaotic maybe the quarterback market could be this off season, but maybe there's an opportunity there to set yourself up so that when Zach goes, you guys got your next option right there.
Yeah, 100%. That would be, your scenario would be ideal, and then it's just, can you make it work financially? Because we're still focused on winning a Grey Cup next year, putting the best possible team together to win next year. Can your young guys on your roster develop like a Drew Brown? Can he develop into a starter? Or do you have to go out in free agency and potentially pay more for an experienced backup that you think can take over in the future? Those are challenging questions that we'll have organizationally, but primary focus is putting a roster together to win the Grey Cup next year, and then worrying about the following year, which is interesting in our league with all the one-year contracts. You've seen teams have massive turnarounds on their roster, and all the frustration of one-year contracts. There is certainly availability for the option for a quick fix, for lack of a better term. So it does allow you to focus year to year at times.
There's the question about you potentially running it back with like the same core, and I'm just curious about how comfortable are you with maybe the young guys that you had in the room this year, and thinking about the fact that you guys are hosting it next year and the way a lot of things could align with a lot of the guys on your roster. How comfortable are you with maybe just some of the young guys you guys had this year?
Well, you saw it. I mean, Ontario was dynamite, like our receiving core. Wheatfall played. I mean, the experience that they got was invaluable. We played a bunch of inexperienced D-line, so, the thought process certainly is, in our league, Canadian or American, the growth from your first year of contributing to your second year is monumental. So we expect our young guys to come back and have, they'll be much further along. You're going to see that. As far as hosting the Grey Cup, I just can't wrap my head around when teams say you're hosting. My opinion, organizations shouldn't say because we're hosting, we're really going to give it our all this year. Because the response from the players and coaches would be, well, why wouldn't we do that every year? There's no secret to we're really going to try this year because we're hosting the Grey Cup. I mean, it's no different from year to year, and once we get settled into the off season, we'll start putting a roster together that we think can win the Grey Cup.
And last one for me. I know that there's nothing set in stone yet, but obviously with Jordan McKeismick and his discussion, I'm just curious, what do you know about Jordan and maybe what he could potentially bring scheme-wise or whatever at his offense?
You know, I'm not. I'm not going to comment. He's going through the interview process. He's going through all that. Obviously, BC's had some successful offensive seasons, and you know, he's clearly a bright young coach. I don't know him particularly well, but you know, I'm sure he's got a bright future in our league somewhere.
Thanks.
Hi, Kyle. Eddie Huban, City News. Nice to meet you. Just big picture, obviously, you know, difficult way to end the season, but, you know, you guys were right there, and this group has had so much success over the last, you know, 5 years, really. How important is it to keep that perspective coming out of a tough loss like that when you're sort of evaluating what this team needs heading into the offseason?
Yeah, that's a good point, and rare for you guys to approach it with a glass half full approach to a question. I appreciate that, but yes, no offense to the rest of you. It is, you know, when you take a step back and go, you know what? Of course, the last 3 final games were very frustrating, and they're all, you know, you can't lump them all together. There's, you know, 3 individual losses. But yeah, I mean, the idea that going to 5 Grey Cups, and let's take a deep breath, and we went on 9-1 or whatever it was down the stretch. We've got a good football team here. I expect us to be good. I said that at the Grey Cup. I'm excited for next year. This is before the game. You know, I was excited for next year based on what I'm looking at compared to years past, where we've got more young guys that have contributed that are under contract. We've got more young players in the building. So yeah, the idea of this is the end of the road where, you know, the team's in a free for all downward, I don't think is accurate. We've got a good group of guys, and you know, it was a 1-point game with 10 minutes left, I think, right? Does that sound right? Before things went downhill. So it was, you know, in the last 2 were, you know, winning with a couple minutes left. So we've had a good run. That just the last game certainly hasn't gone our way, but you know, I do think the pieces are here, and we're just going to keep doing what we've been doing.
Just not to piggyback on another question that was asked, but just in terms of your defense, a couple of young guys in your secondary, Home and Ford, you know, in particular, had really good seasons. Is that going to be a priority for you guys to, bring those guys back?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not going to go through everybody, but yeah, I mean, Evan and Terrell had dynamite years, and you know, I certainly when you're a Canadian that's starting at a traditionally American position, I think your value is through the roof. I expect him to be highly sought after in free agency for sure, and deservedly so. As I said, it seems that's our pattern around here. We draft our young Canadians, we develop, they get to play a little bit, and then some of them get gigantic contracts from other teams, and we organizationally we wear that as a badge of success that we're doing things right, and you're happy for players if they can go, you know, capitalize on their playing ability, and us giving them a chance, you know, we feel good about it.
If Ted or Danny were to go, whether it's this offseason, next offseason, or in the future, do you feel like you'd be able to replace them internally, or would you want to cast a net outside the organization?
Well, it's so tough, John, with this operations cap. Like, there is no internal anymore. Like, teams are running bare bones operations across the board. So, you know, you start looking at your contacts in the U.S. and start compiling a list of names for some U.S. scouts. You start looking at potential guys on other CFL teams, and when I say other guy, most teams only have 2 or 3 people in a personnel department, so you start looking at those. But yeah, those are the, you know, we did this a couple years ago when everybody's contract was up. You start sort of compiling your list of potential candidates and see how it ends up.
Have any of your players had NFL workout requests so far?
One, I don't think it's gone through yet, so I don't want to say. I don't even think he knows yet because it literally just came through this morning. But one of the players did. That'll be announced. Said I don't want. I would hate for him to. It's a kind of a cool deal that when he gets the call from the NFL team, I'd rather hear it from them than from us.
Kyle, pardon me. Have you had any conversations about treating the salary cap differently in a year in which you host the Grey Cup? It's a soft salary cap, and BC signed a $600,000 quarterback in mid-season and said, yeah, we're going to be over the cap. Have there been any conversations about treating it differently, maybe absorbing the penalties because you are hosting the Grey Cup?
No, again, because if we wanted to, you know, if we wanted to win the Grey, then we should be talking about going over the salary cap every year. So we've, you know, in the last 2 years, it was interesting the last couple years because we went over in that last game where we ended up resting some players. So we rested a bunch of players, activated a bunch of young guys, and we're over by 15 or 20 grand, I want to say. This year we'll be under the salary cap, projected to be under. We're just kind of, we're going to carve out to the cent, I think, how much money we have just to use a signing bonus on somebody this year. But yeah, I mean, Mike are very supportive. If we were to say, you know, they rarely, you know, they would probably be all for it, but no, we haven't talked about that.
And I've wondered if next year wide receivers will, as kind of a position group, league-wide, will need to take a haircut, just when you think of what the top-end receivers were available and able to do this year. Could I get your take on that?
That will be an interesting one. As I said, you remember, you know, it was Kenny that said it post-COVID where that thing jumped. Interesting because, you know, BC had signed Lucky for right around just over 200 then, and then Edmonton comes in at 300 for Kenny at the time, and that has set the bar. And to my earlier comment, guys aren't interested in taking pay cuts. Once someone's going to pay you 300, the agents are like, well, why would we? So it's a battle, and you saw that in Hamilton last year. That's a challenging. It's a challenging ask to your point, reset the market when they're used to making up here to say, well, we think it's right now that you should make it up here, and they disagree. So that will be that's a challenging position group for sure.
How do you approach it when you have players who are in their mid-30s who, as fans, we go, is this guy going to play some more? How do you approach that? Like if a guy's in his mid-30s and you wonder, is he going to continue playing? As an organization, do you talk to someone? Do you wait for them to come to you and go, I'm thinking I might be done?
Oh, from a player standpoint, yeah, none of the players have said anything about that. Every single player on our team has indicated they want to keep playing football.
Okay.
As of now, yep.
On that note, I wanted to ask you about Zach Collaros.
Yep.
And, you know, we asked him a couple days after the Cup about his desire to continue playing and that sort of thing, like any player under contract and like you laid out. But there's expecting a player to come back, and then there's knowing that a player is themselves expecting to come back. Have you had conversations with him? Are you expecting him back?
Yeah, to know, there's been no indication to think Zach wouldn't come back. I mean, he showed, you know, he had an up and down year, but when he was on, man, and he's a leader, and the guys believe in him, and I believe in Zach. You know, he's a winner, you know, and all he's done since he's been here is win, and got us to 5 Grey Cups, and we expect a 6th.
I guess I'm talking from his perspective that he wasn't sure. You know, he has that conversation with his wife and family every year.
Yeah.
No indication one way or another?
No,
from him?
there's kind of a cooling off. Like it's been a week, and it's been a tough week on everybody. You know, you let the emotions kind of settle in and take a deep breath, and you know, these guys need to get away and shut down for an extended amount. The older you are, you just take a little bit more time, spend it with the family, talk, and you know, I don't think there's any indication that would lead me to believe Zach's planning on moving on. I think, like, everybody's frustrated after that game, and I think once cooler heads prevail, we refocus on next year.
Lots of dominoes to fall, and of course, a lot of situations touch and go with coaches interviewing in other markets. Been reported that Jordan Maximic granted permission to speak with you guys if Buck moves on. I wanted to ask you about Jason Hogan, 3 years with the organization, and where you guys, how do you see Jason Hogan in the
He's been,
organization?
you know, it's a great story of a U Sport guy that's players love him. He works hard, and you know, he's got a bright future, and it's awesome. I like to see the CFL teams give U Sport coaches an opportunity, young Canadian guys, to show that we can go toe to toe with the American guys. We might not have had the experience or some of the pedigree, but we're good football people, and we can coach and just give the opportunity. So he's one that's just fighting for any opportunity, and he's a hard worker and a great guy.
Anyone giving you an indication yet, any players that they don't want to discuss contract, they'll be hitting the free agent market?
Oh gosh, no, not yet. But again, Paul, it's been so early to have been told that. Like, no one certainly said, don't even offer me. Like, everybody likes hearing an offer. And then even the ones that would like to explore will take that information into free agency. So that stuff is pretty rare. No agent's going to say, we're going to free agency. They'll-
You've re-signed Sergio already. Have you got
Yeah.
others that are on the
Nothing yet.
burner?
Sergio was kind of talked throughout the year, so that kind of was just once the season ended, execute the contract. But as of now, nothing. But I hope in the next, well, certainly before the end of the calendar year, we'd like to get 3 or 4 of our main guys knocked off would be ideal.
Thank you.